Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are returning to War in the Pacific Admirals Edition, our Let's Play series against Evoken. It is June 25th, 1942, and this is the beginning of an episode where we will be looking at quite a bit of turns for combat replays. I've got 5 in the hopper, and a couple of turns where some stuff happens. For the meantime, we are landing troops on Funafuti. Honestly, I forgot that we landed troops on Funafuti. It has been so long, but you can see here we've got cruisers bombarding the shore at Funafuti, trying to hit any Japanese troops that may be here, and we'll see if we can land and take this base. I think we've got like a conga force or a medium-sized force here that we're landing. Does look like there's some Japanese troops here, so you can see the Australia, the heavy cruiser leading the task force, the Maradios, and then some destroyers. 139 Japanese casualties, some of those regular infantry. It does look like they're made up of the 7th Japanese, I think this is Naval Aviation Engineer Group. That's all the report on who they were shooting at, so hopefully that's all it is, and it's not actually a combat unit, because I'm not landing a strong force here. We took 64 casualties, a lot of disabled, mostly because the troops were probably inadequately prepared for the landings there. But we'll see. We'll see what transpires if we're able to take that island away. We've been starting to poke at the periphery of the Japanese possessions. Looks like we're landing some supplies there. But yeah, we've been starting to poke at the periphery of Japanese possessions, hoping to, manage to do some harm to them. And I may adjust the window here between replays. Well, I think you can see everything. I might not be able to, but whatever. But yeah, so we... Oh, I was doing that. It was like the replay froze up and you couldn't see what was happening. It was just Japanese bombers hitting Manila, though, or Clark Field. So no surprise there, nothing meaningful happening there. Inadequately prepared troops was the story of the first year of the war. Well, that is true. That is true. But yeah, we're trying to take Funafuti. We've been trying to poke at the periphery of the Japanese possessions, mainly to, one, secure a strategic line of communications to prevent any sort of float planes being able to relay back convoys going between the U.S. and Australia, and prevent easy attacks either by cruising forces that might be launching raids into our strategic line of communications or, submarine activities. So that's one major reason for trying to push back on the periphery. The other piece also is just setting us up for a more a better situation where we can land on bases we really want to take back, important bases, without giving them a heads up, right? We don't want those float planes to be out there telling him, hey, there's a task force coming 3 days before it hits the target, because that'll just make it way too easy for him to then organize a response before we've established ourselves on the beach. We want wherever we land to be, ideally no notice, or at the very least a day or two. Allied shock attack, Rocky Mountain Battalion captures Funafuti and takes out a Japanese unit here, 268 casualties, 4 squads destroyed, 21 destroyed, and 2 between the squads, non-combatant engineers. So we destroyed the 7th Japanese JNAF company with the Rocky Mountain Ranger Battalion, which I think are Canadians. I think the Canadians got into the fight, which is funny because I can't imagine Canada deploying meaningful numbers of troops to the Pacific Theater of Operations for political reasons. The same reason the U.S. did not deploy large numbers of troops to India, for example. But nonetheless, good to see our brethren to the north getting their their noses bloodied a little bit and helping us retake some rocks in the Pacific on June 25th, 1942. So pretty quiet turn other than the landing at Funafuti, which I guess is a major thing. We had cruisers bombarding there, and we took that back from the Japanese. Yeah, that's actually the replay. I'm not going to delve too much into the actual strategic map stuff because we've got 4 more turns to come, but I do want to take a quick look at Funafuti, which we took back from them before we go into future replays. So apparently we've got some intel on Tarawa, But you can see here, Baker Island, RDRs. We've been isolating Canton Island. We took Vadavupu, which was unopposed, with a Australian force, the Kanga force, not that long ago. We'll see where the Roo force is, if we can use them, and maybe the Winnie the Pooh force on another landing. But then we've also got the Rocky Mountain Ranger Battalion here, Canadian infantry, 370 soldiers, 390 support personnel, winning the Battle of Funafuti there. It is a victory point objective of 3 points for the Japanese, 1 for the Allies, so a 4-point swing toward us. I don't think any units were actually destroyed, so we didn't take any victory point damage. The Japanese did suffer a few squads destroyed also, so that'll impact victory points. Not that that's ever really a big thing with what we do. You can see Japan's score is 1,700, ours is 17,000, ours is 11,000. They're ahead, but the way the game works is if they've got triple our points at the end of this year, then they win a sort of an auto victory. I guess it assumes a political victory. Doesn't look likely that they're going to get to 30,000 points. If they're double ours by the end of 43, then they can win at that point. But again, we're a year and a half away from 43, and they're not even up double there either. So pretty comfortably not a decisive victory for Japan at this point in time. Give me one moment here, and I will go ahead and switch to the next day's save here. So that was the 25th replay. Let's go ahead and move forward to the 26th. All right, that looks good. So let's go ahead and make the next replay. And we'll see what happens here. We are moving forward to June 26, 1942. I've got replays all the way up through June 29th, with us then issuing orders for June 30th. We are almost Independence Day, our first Independence Day in this game's history. We maybe should be pushing more aggressively. I don't know. We haven't seen the Japanese be all that aggressive ever since we saw XTRG kind of stand down from leading the opposition forces early on in the game. And so there were a lot of really heavy fights early on, like 60 episodes ago or so. We were regularly seeing large-scale fights. The last, I'd say, month to 2 months of game time have mostly just been sort of consolidation, various Japanese players trying to fix up Japan's economy, presumably in the background, maybe doing some logistical work. I'm assuming that's what Evoken's doing. I am still anticipating a strike at Burma eventually, but we will see. So we can see here the June 26th turn just immediately jumping to more bombing in the Philippines, which is helping him train crews up. He lost like 100 bombers over Singapore, so he badly needs to train new bomber crews, and so he is using Singapore as a live fire training base to do that. And this turn looks pretty uneventful. No submarine activity in the morning, just some air operations over the Philippines in the afternoon. Doesn't appear to be much in the way of air operations here in the afternoon on this turn. So I think of all the turns that we've got in store for us today, this one will be the least eventful. We do have some stuff that I have launched, some air raids, in a future day that'll be coming up here momentarily, which we'll be able to get a look at here in a little bit here. But it looks like June 26th, pretty chill, not much at all going on here, and I'm assuming we'll just let this stuff flow through. I don't think there's even anything worth looking at on the strategic map, so we'll probably just load up the next day's save and go from there. So just doing some supplies, some fortifications, and it should bring us back to the main screen here in just a moment. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see, like, is Evoken just going to sit back and wait for our eventual counterattack, which is probably still a month or two away. I have started preparing soldiers for landing in New Caledonia, and so I have thought, hey, that could be the next or the first real major counter blow against the Japanese. That certainly could be a strategy, and it is kind of one I'm tentatively planning for. But what will happen if if he does something, that disrupts that? It's certainly possible. I don't know where he would strike. That would make a lot of sense. He could go for Australia, but that would perhaps be a little foolhardy. I think the more logical explanation is Burma, which he's way behind in taking. That's what I would do. Meanwhile, I believe this is the turn where I start some of the air operations. I moved some units into position to bomb Bangkok because we had some intel that there were some ships in harbor at Bangkok. And so I moved a detachment of B-17s, 8 B-17s into, fly out of Rangoon and sort of skip bomb at Bangkok. And then I also moved some P-38s into some bases where oh no! 2 of our submarines near Singapore hit mines. That's not good. Meanwhile, we've got some Blenheims coming in here, night bombing at Bangkok. 4 250-pound bombs dropped from 10,000 feet. Took a little bit of flak damage. Didn't look like we did anything. I think I ordered them to do a city attack. 7 Blenheims coming in here. Thunderstorms, which are obviously affecting it. Another 4 250-pound bombs. Again, I think dropped on Bangkok's port. So no real damage. Maybe a little bit of harassing damage to any enemy fighter aircraft. Looks like we had a temporary flotation damage thing, so that's not great. But we'll see. I-7 diving. Hey, Grim. I'd say it goes well-ish. All right. Rattling the sub. Near miss rattling the sub. Evading patterns. Didn't get any hits, any real damage here. Firing K-guns. Ooh, we got a hit. Side penetration. Damage. Rattling. Another hit might finish her off. If that's a direct hit with the depth charge, though, I-7 may be in trouble. Doesn't say heavy damage or fires, so probably modest damage there. Maybe enough to drive the I-7 back to port to get repaired, though. So, good job, DD Gridley. Meanwhile, our own S-47 here near Tulagi. Getting... So the attention of some ASW work out that way. Looks like more air attacks against some of our subs in the Strait of Malacca, which is where those guys ran into mines, so that's not great. There's the P-38s I was talking about. They did a sweep over Bangkok in support of some bombing raids I had planned. Doesn't look like there were any Japanese aircraft up on cap, unfortunately. I think we had 50 fighters are reported to be at Bangkok's airfield, but none of them wanted to come up to play against our well-trained P-38 crews, so no major engagements there. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay over the bombing audio as that drops in and out. Okay. I've been having some issues with clipping audio, which makes me think the gain is turned up too high on my mic. But the problem is the gameplay audio is so excruciatingly loud. I've got it set to negative 20 decibels, and it's still high. I don't know why War in the Pacific plays so high. Alright, so a whole bunch of nothing over Bangkok. Whole bunch of fighters came in. The coordination on the initial P-38s was pretty good. We had 20 of them come in a group, and then we kind of had some stragglers come in a bit later. Not bad for flying out of Mulman. I flew them out of Mulmine where there was no aviation support. So there's nobody there to service the aircraft. A bare-bones operation indeed. I-7's still around, still hunting for it. Oh, grim. The majority of the Americans in the Philippines haven't surrendered yet. We're still, like, they've just run out of supply, but we counterattacked out of Bataan, drove 2 Japanese divisions back, nearly wrecked them. Then we attacked again at Clark Field to try and take it back from the Japanese, and that's where the 16th and the 33rd Japanese divisions were, and they stopped us cold with heavy casualties. So we were stuck there in a position where we could not do anything to dislodge them. We didn't have the supplies to replace our losses, and they did not have sufficient strength to push us out of that hex. And so we've just been staring at each other as we slowly starve to death. So that's the situation in the Philippines. Now, I think with having no supply there in late June of 1942, if he wanted to, he could definitely launch an attack there that would dislodge us at this point. Our supplies have gotten so bad that if he was to launch an attack, I think our boys would fold, but he doesn't seem to want to risk that. Which makes sense. I mean, squads destroyed costs victory points. It's easy for him to just wait 2 months and then he'll get them all to surrender, as they waste away into nothingness. So we've still got a couple more replays to look at, but let's just take a real quick sneak peek at the situation. So we did bomb Bangkok. We have intel that says there's troop transports, cargo ships, and cruiser mine layers in port, 6 ships in port. We moved planes in to try and, surprise him. So I have no aviation support at Mole Mine. I have some infantry, some armor, but there is nobody there to service these aircraft. There's no aviation support. I moved these fighters in because they are on a rail line with Rangoon. And so my logic is, even if I don't have any way to keep these guys flying at a high sortie rate, it doesn't matter. I can transfer the ones that can still fly at the end of the operation back to Rangoon by flying, and the guys who can't fly because they're damaged, they'll just get crated up, thrown on a train, and transported via train. Because yes, you can transport aircraft via rail, and they take damage when you do that, potentially, but they're already going to be damaged from those operations. So that's my logic there. Anyway, we moved 25 P-38s. It looks like we did have one aircraft go down for maintenance. I don't know if he's repairing himself without any aviation support, or if that's just an estimate if we had aviation support. We have no aviation support, so I'm not sure. It's a pretty good crew, so we swapped out the AVG group, which had really good pilots, for this 49th group. We did bring in like 6 or 7 pilots from the AVG group, so you can see we actually do have 2 pilots here, 3 pilots here, 4 pilots here who are aces. Armstrong, Shepard, Irvin, Morrissey. 6 kills for the first 3, 5 for the next, and then we've got 1 guy at 4 at Bartling. The experience levels all real solid. 1 guy almost to 80, a bunch of guys at 70, and then a lot of guys who were part of the original unit who are a bit lower down in the 50s and 40s. But their strafing and their defensive flying skills are up. Their air skills are very good as well, just shy of 70 or in the 70s for most. So most of these guys are quality pilots, even if their experience is a bit lacking. And they should gain experience as they have combat ops. So we did move the P-38s into Mole Mine. We also moved 2 groups of Hurricanes. So we moved in a total of 57 fighter aircraft into Mole Mine to support the operations, because the Hurricanes can also get there. With fuel tanks, the Hurricanes have a range of 7. Bangkok is 7. So they can fly to Bangkok and operate against potentially equal numbers of enemy aircraft. We have intel that says there are 60 Japanese fighters at Bangkok and not much else. So those guys are going to be running sweeps out ahead of bombing missions. You saw we had some groups of Blenheims. We've got 32 Blenheims, which we moved into Rangoon to launch those bombing raids. We also moved in 8 B-17Ds, which are going to be making port attacks. And then we also moved in some PBY Catalinas for port attacks. So we've got 11 American planes between the 3 Catalinas and the 8 Fortresses set to skip bomb at low altitude. For those of you who may not remember, skip bombing means basically coming in at near treetop altitude. These guys are at 1,000 feet, so not quite that, but coming in at real low altitude, and then when you drop the bomb, you kind of just skip it along the water into the side of the ship. And that can be very effective, much more effective than high altitude bombing from a 4-engine bomber anyway. And so we do have those 17s. They're not super well-trained crews like the pilot, like the fighters. These guys have low-altitude bombing skills in the 50s and 60s, which is decent, but some of these guys are in the 20s also. Most of them are in the 50s and 60s, which is decent. Their ground bombing is nowhere near as well. Low-altitude ground bombing, not good. But low-altitude naval is good. Defensive flying is good. Just general high-altitude ground bombing is good, but we're not doing that. So that's what those guys' skills are at. And that's what we're going to continue trying to hit Bangkok there. If we do just take a quick look at the Philippines, where we saw, we were talking about that, supplies ain't good. Almost no food for anybody. So I don't know how much longer they're going to survive. They've still got some AV stats. They've still got some, that's assault value or whatever, attack value. So they do have some combat power still, but I assume if they get attacked, they'll get a big negative penalty for having almost no supplies. We did move 1 unit back, the 4th Marine Regiment of the U.S. Marines, moved back to Bataan. There was a little bit of supply left in the depots back there, 500 supplies, And the Marine Regiment, by abandoning the rest of the troops, is actually back in full supply. They've got 306 supplies assigned to their unit. They need 274. So these guys are back on normal rations, not half rations, not quarter rations, full rations for these 1,500 combat troops and 1,600 support personnel who have moved back to Bataan. We did move some supplies in via submarine, which was enough to support the regiment, but not enough for anything else. Meanwhile, we do have 2 subs. I think it was the Finback ran into a mine. She's actually okay. 25 float damage. That's not too bad. The one that's not doing so hot, the Truant, 87% float damage. I assume the Truant will sink. She has not sunk yet. Both of these guys ran into mines trying to get around the Strait of Malacca near Singapore, and they ran into mines that must have been placed by the Japanese there. So presumably we will lose the Truant. She is worth 10 victory points. She is a British submarine. Damn, they have working torpedoes. No! That's like one of the 3 subs I have that has working torpedoes and isn't an ancient S-boat. It would really suck to lose a Triton class, because the American subs all kind of suck right now. And the Dutch subs have working torpedoes, but they kind of suck too. So that's the situation there. Let's go ahead and do another replay. Like I said, I've got more replays to show, so we should probably do that. I remember those Blenheims did hit Bangkok, but the B-17s didn't fly. So, yeah. I did use the U.S. subs to run supplies into Bataan, just a few. It was like 3 of them. And historically, you know, that did happen. And not like the Japanese used it kind of as a default, but historically the Americans actually did bring in a fair bit of 40mm anti-aircraft shells and some other shells during the operations. It was, if you read Silent Victory by Claire Blair Jr., quite a few submarine stops at the Philippines during the siege to evacuate key personnel, and usually on the way in they would bring ammunition or things like that were important, key parts for things like that. Okay, so we've got an American sub is getting depth charged off the coast of Hokkaido by Japanese patrols. Looks like they took a few hits, but nothing critical. Meanwhile, we are trying to go for I-7 again. She took the hit yesterday. We're dropping some depth charges on her. A Dutch destroyer doing the depth charging right here. She's got a 3 depth charge pattern here. A lot of rattling going on. Ooh, nice hit there. Damaged engine. Good result. Maybe she'll be driven home. Another hit, but only doesn't say heavy damage. It's kind of lame. And then we've got the S-47 near Tulagi. She doesn't get hurt at all. She just dives. And submarine, so Truant is having flotation damage, which is not great. We talked about not wanting to lose one of the few subs we have with working torpedoes, but she probably will get hurt. Meanwhile, the S-47 taking depth charge from Japanese patrol boats near Tulagi. We sank a Japanese tanker there in the last episode, if you will, just before these replays. And so I was trying to recreate magic, but instead S-47 is just eating a bunch of depth charges. So no major hits there, no flotation damage, or no meaningful flotation damage there. But she is, getting suppressed, if you will. So, all right. What did she shoot at? We had a Dutch submarine fire torpedoes at a destroyer, it looks like, in the Strait of Malacca. Air operation AM phase. We'll see if there's any more operations around Bangkok. 14 hurricanes are sweeping over Bangkok again at 35,000 feet, higher than the Zero can fly up. Nothing comes to get them. A second sweep of 14, so both squadrons of hurricanes flew in. Pretty well coordinated, at least amongst themselves. Okay. A few straggler hurricanes come in. B-17s! Get them, boys! 500-pound bomb hit. 500-pound bomb hit. 500-pound bomb hit. Nice. We hit Japanese shipping here. All right, so one bomb hit the Senko Maru, and she is on fire. 2 bombs hit the Asaka-san Maru, and she is on fire. And 1 bomb hit the Kinso Maru, and she is on fire. So we have damaged 3 Japanese transport ships with 8 B-17s flying out of Rangoon. That's pretty efficient flying. Actually, only 6 made it to the target, and they were all damaged by flak. But they came in here and they did some damage here. Port attack carrying 500-pound GP bombs. I think they're flying with reduced loads because Rangoon's airfield might not be large enough, maybe? I'm not sure. The range shouldn't be reduced loads, but 3 Catalinas come in. Ooh, another hit. So 2 Catalinas damaged, and the Asaka-san Maru took another bomb from one of the Catalinas. Heavy fires, heavy damage. That's what you want to see if you're hoping to sink an enemy ship. No gurgling noise, though. So, unfortunately, at least right now, no indication that she was sunk. Funny, P. Warner, funny. All right. Well, that's probably the big event of the turn. We do have another turn still to come up. Unfortunately, because they're all in enemy bases, I can't just, like, go in there and see what happened. I can only see my aircraft and speculate about what happened to his stuff. So we'll have no way of knowing how badly we hurt him. S-47 still hanging out at Tulagi. Wasn't hurt too bad by the depth charging yesterday. Some flotation issues on one of the other S-boats, which had been at Tulagi that we pulled out. More bombardment attacks at Clark Field. Okay. So I think we've got one more turn of replays, and then we'll want to take a look at the actual map and see how things played out. But I would say that was a pretty good turn for us to have... what was that? 3 enemy cargo ships we did meaningful damage to. 1 very badly damaged. So that's good news. They are in a port, which makes them sinking a little bit less likely. But at the very least, they'll eat up resources to repair and presumably be out of action for a little while. Oops. So we're going to just jump ahead to the last turn replay. I'm not going to look at the individual planes or squadrons or other things like that quite yet. Okay, just switching the save over here off on my other screen. And we'll look at our last combat replay here in a second. There we go. All right, now, the question is, should we attack Bangkok for a 3rd turn? The second attack kind of made some sense because we went in with only a few bombers, mostly at night, and a few fighters. And so it made sense where it thought maybe he doesn't want to have fighters scramble and deal where they're having an altitude disadvantage. The second turn of our raids on Bangkok, however, we went in with B-17s, which are a little bit of sitting ducks, and also Catalinas, which are totally sitting ducks. And so would it be advisable to launch the 3rd mission against Bangkok for a 3rd day in a row? Probably not. But you know what? I did it anyway. So we'll see what happens. Pretty quiet naval phase. AM air operation phase here. "14 hurricanes sweeping over Bangkok." Okay, so nothing. They come in the morning and face no opposition. They come in at 39,000 feet, 35,000 feet. Okay, so he didn't scramble anything. Second group of hurricanes also come in. Nothing scrambled against them. So maybe we don't have to worry about him getting cute and trying to ambush us. This is one of those games where it's very sort of chess matchy, where it's like advisable to try and catch the enemy by surprise and then get out of there before they can respond. But at least the Hurricanes all came in here with no Japanese top cover. The B-17s come in as well. They put another 500-pound bomb into a Japanese ship here. A new ship is hit. The troop transport Huzi Maru. So we've now damaged, at least meaningfully, because all of them have at least an on-fire notification. One probably nearly sunk, might be a wreck. Two probably at least a month worth of repairs, I would guess. But a 500-pound bomb into the side of the Huzi Maru, so doing damage there. 3 Catalinas coming up. Oh. Well, that's not good. 66 Oscars against 3 low-flying Catalinas. Sorry, boys. Where did they come from? Well, the fighters swept and there was nothing there. They got spotted at 19 nautical miles, so maybe the other raids got in and didn't get spotted in time for... But it said 36 of them were airborne. So I'm a little bit confusing. All right, well, poor Catalinas. It's a training flight that got caught up in the attack. Does that mean he didn't even intend for this to happen? They were just doing their daily training and they decided to attack? Oh boy. Lightnings coming in scattered here. 3 P-38 Lightnings coming in against 60 Oscars. 1 lightning damage, spinning away on fire. Another lightning damage. They got an Oscar. Another lightning damage. Another lightning damage, spinning away on fire. Okay, so this has no losses, but when you say 2 lightnings spun away on fire, I'm guessing that's not good news for those pilots. It does say they shot down 1 Oscar, though. 30 minutes for all groups to reach interception. Group patrols 12,000 feet, scrambling fighters to 1,000. 36 planes not yet engaged. So that's a little bit of the confusing part. There were 30 planes engaged. No, 36 planes not yet engaged. So this means there must be 36 more coming. So 70? All right, well, this is a little bit more of an even fight. 20 lightnings coming in. Oh, never mind. Against 65 Oscars. 3-1. Don't tell me the odds. Come on, boys. Do your things. Now, keep in mind, what you're going to see here is going to be very, very much fog of war. We will have to look at the strategic map to know better what's actually happening. You'd take the fork-tailed devil? It doesn't say they're diving on the target, which is they should be. They're flying at a higher altitude than I think. Well, certainly than higher than the Zero can get to. I don't know if the Oscars. I don't know what we'll have left, Warner, for a 4th day in a row. We'll see. We're doing a lot of damage. I'm seeing a lot of reports of Oscars damaged. Some P-38s running out of ammo. Oh, there's the report of them diving. Okay, so they do have an altitude advantage, which should help negate the numbers a little bit. They've got an altitude advantage. They got a firepower advantage. They might have a skill advantage. I don't know what his squadron's skills are, but our Lightnings have a lot of high quality pilots. All right, we got an Oscar. One just went boom. I showed you the results, Hauser. What do you think? I think I'm not, you know. It seems like this is going reasonably well. It's not going disastrously, I guess. I'll put it that way. A swirling dogfight over Bangkok. The Fork Devils hopefully making a name for themselves. Not a lot of decisive reporting here so far. Got another Oscar. Did say one P-38 was trailing away with smoke, but... They certainly seem to be given as good as they're getting. I'll put it that way, despite being outnumbered 3-1. Oh, we just lost one. Well, at this point, frankly, Seatown, I think this is the first time that we have seen a genuine P-38 versus frontline Japanese fighter engagement of the war. They've seen some P-38s sweeping, but I don't think we've actually fought a dogfight against enemy aircraft with P-38s yet. So this is probably the initial engagement where the Japanese are going to be like, what is that aircraft? And, you know, how do we respond? So the Lightnings came in here with an altitude advantage, a power advantage, a firepower advantage, a speed advantage. So they chose this fight, I guess is the best way to put it. Let's go ahead and jump through the rest of this engagement. So, according to the post-battle report, 35 Oscars engaged, 20... So I guess some of the aircraft didn't engage, 35 didn't engage yet. So 35 Oscars engaged, 20 P-38s. That's a much closer odds-wise. 6 Oscars were destroyed. 3 P-38s were lost as well. So 6-3. I will take a 2-1 kill-to-death ratio in any engagement in 1942 against Japanese fighters. Those are pilots they can't afford to lose. Now, the only downside is our pilots are flying over hostile territory, so if they bail out, they're gone. Whereas the Japanese, if they bail out, they're safe. But now the other question is, with our planes flying at a pretty far distance away and without adequate aviation support at their base of operations, what is left in terms of planes that can fly another day? Probably not much. We shall see, though. So this would be the first. Again, I'm just wondering. I'm curious. Was there like a famous first engagement between the Japanese and the P-38? Because this feels like it would be a pretty big deal. And I want to write a song about it using AI. I'm grinning over here, Hauser. I know it's your favorite thing. But the minstrels, they would sing of such a day. All right, apparently there's a bunch of Russian stuff arriving in the east. Not great, not terrible. That's his perspective. I don't know what he was hoping for. All right, so first things first. Intel, what do we got? Aircraft losses. Today we claim, and again, these numbers are probably lower, but we claimed 15 Oscars shot down, 14 in air-to-air combat, 1 operational loss. We also claim 6 P-38s, and those are 100% accurate because we know what we lost. We lost 6 P-38s, 4 in air-to-air combat, 2 in operational losses. If you told me it was 6-15, that's a big win, I think, for the Americans. If it's 6-10, I still think that's a win. Even 6-6, like 1-1, we win 1-1 losses. But anyway, so total air-to-air losses. Well, this is strange. So on the right side, it says total losses for Japan, 13-6 for the Allies. On the left side over here, that number would have to be at least 17-6. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. Those two numbers are out of sync. I don't know if 13-6 is the real number versus whatever, but anyway. If we go to pilot losses, we lost 1 pilot KIA, 3 MIA. Now, I am assuming if we do unit here, all of our losses were in the same group here, flying those P-38s. So we lost one ace, Shepard, who had 7 kills. I don't think he's the guy in our group who had 7 kills, so he must have gotten some kills in today's fighting and then was shot down. And then Moore, an MIA with 4 kills, and Wilborn, a MIA with 1 kill. Those presumably all lost today because they're in the squadron that was engaged. 4 pilots lost is not great. There's a chance some of the MIAs could make their way back to us. I think it's unlikely, but we're only a few hexes from Tavoy, so it's possible they could make their way back to a friendly base, and some of the MIAs may not end up staying MIA forever. But if we go to top pilots here, yeah, so we've got more 7-kill aces than we had before. So Shepard was a new one, and then we still had the Irvin, who was in the 49th group as well, and then actually these guys didn't fly in the 35th group, but we've got some other guys over here too. So if we go to the actual fighter squadrons who had flown, oof. So we lost the 6 planes, and then we've got 15 more down for damage and repairs. Several pilots here gained experience. These little green numbers indicate those experience levels went up as a result of their fighting. We had, what was it, 1 pilot with 7 kills. I think we had 4 with 6. We had 4 aces, so we now have 3 actually. Irvin is at 7, Armstrong, Morrissey at 6, Bartling at 4. But we gained some experience, these guys. Several of the pilots who flew were lower experience, who gained some experience as well. 3 MIA pilots, 1 KIA. And then, yeah. So I think at this point, with no ground crew to repair these planes on site, it probably makes sense to package them up and transfer them back to Rangoon. So go ahead and transfer to Rangoon. The planes that can fly will fly, and then the ones that cannot will be left behind. We should... Well, I guess the other ones are just traveling by rail? It didn't say we destroyed them, right? I really hope it didn't just destroy them. Yeah, it didn't destroy them. So I'm guessing some of the planes that could be sent by rail are just coming by rail? That's strange. Yep, one day, 15 of these planes will arrive in Rangoon by rail. Okay, cool. So they're transiting these aircraft, which are unserviceable. They loaded them up on boxcars in Rangoon and are sending them back. So, all told, not too bad. Intel claims 55 aircraft at Bangkok. Still, that hasn't changed, so that's interesting. Doesn't look like he pulled his ships out. Well, it says 0 ships sighted in port, and it says AP, AK, AP, CM, so I don't know about that. Our Hurricanes are still in top-notch shape. These boys are built for fighting without support. These guys have flown 3 straight days of operations, and yet they don't have a single aircraft down for maintenance, despite having no aviation support at this base. So good on them, boys. We're going to pull all these guys back. We're going to stop with the raids on Bangkok after today's action. The only exception might be maybe we'll do some night raids to give the pilots, the Japanese pilots, a little bit of a headache, just as they kind of do that. But, yeah. Meanwhile, maybe, I don't know. So I moved some reinforcing units in here. If you remember, we did a deliberate attack against there's a Japanese division south of Quilin, and we did a deliberate attack when we had, I think, about 1,300 assault value, or maybe it was 1,500. It got adjusted down to around 800, and we had a 1-to-2 ratio against us. So it gave the enemy better stats because they were defending, and so we moved in some reinforcements here to try and improve our odds. So we more than doubled our assault value strength up to over 3,000. We've got sufficient supplies. The Japanese have not reinforced. Obviously, we suffered a fair bit of disruption in the units that were here previously, but like the 66th Corps is new. I am tempted, or I'm going to, launch an attack against the 14,000 men of a Japanese division south of Quilin. I'm only not certain on how to do that attack. Do we do a shock attack or do we do a deliberate attack? A deliberate attack, like our previous one, is the safe approach. That means it's unlikely any of our troops get wrecked, but we might not do a ton of damage to him either. If we do a shock attack and it succeeds, we might basically knock that division out of action for a good long while, rack up a ton of victory points, and have a huge disparity in casualties between him and us. However, that's a high variance outcome, and if you fail, we could wreck effectively several Chinese corps in the failure. And so I'm not certain on that. I feel like we should be safe to launch a shock attack. You never know. The Chinese troops attack much less effectively than the Japanese, so that might not be a wise approach. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, 4th Marines still hanging out here, full supply, good shape in Bataan, while the rest of these boys starve at Clark Field. And their effectiveness gradually declining as a result of lack of supplies. The Truant, she's still hanging out here. She's really not making much progress, still at 87 float damage. Hadn't really made much progress. Moving 1 hex a day, maybe, to the north. I'm just trying to get her to Great Nicobar. Maybe we can plug some of the holes in the flotation damage. 68 major float. That's hardcore damage there. She may get sunk on her way by these other Japanese ships there. The American sub is making much better progress. The Finback didn't suffer too badly. She will survive and is on her way back to Colombo. I don't know that there's a lot else to show off this turn. We've got a bunch of cargo ships in Calcutta loading supplies for Burma. We have done a great job of filling Burma with lots of supplies. He has been very slow, and frankly, I'm surprised he has not moved in more bomber units into Thailand to try and close off resupply to Rangoon, because we are just pumping supplies into Rangoon. We got 100,000 supplies in Rangoon proper. We got another almost 20,000 down near Mole Mine. Tavoy is a little bit less, but that's good. We don't want to put too much on the front line there. We've got several thousand in every base. 14,000 at Magwai, and then 7,000 at Mandalay. So we're trying to pump as many supplies into Rangoon as possible for 2 reasons. One, when the offensive against Rangoon comes and he shuts down the port, we'll need supplies to defend, and the supplies don't come over the mountains from Impal and Kohima in any meaningful number, so we need to get as many supplies into Rangoon as possible before the combat operations really kick off there. And then the other part is the more supplies we have in Rangoon, we can kind of create a sink effect where if you've got a bunch of supplies above the drain here in Burma, they'll get sucked in to China, so it'll supplement the fact that the Burma Road is still running, but it'll get supplemented by the fact that, is this an American unit? What is this? There's an aviation unit, an air task force unit? Where did this come from? In Kunming, did they just get raised? They must be, are they American? Because they don't have Claire Chenault. Huh. They're an American unit. Okay, that's why it's green. And it'll create a sink effect where the supplies will get pulled in here. Am I playing alongside multiple factions? Just myself. I'm all allies. This game doesn't have the mechanics to have individual players for different factions. Although I suppose you could pass the save file around if you really wanted to do that. That is an option. But yeah, I would love to shatter this division here. Maybe we'd go shatter the division at Nanning and invade Indochina. He's been very passive, and I'm guessing he's putting together some operations somewhere, but so far we really haven't seen much. This bloody nose over Bangkok for both of us is really the first fighting we've seen since Evoken has taken over, the first real meaningful fighting that we've seen. Let's see here. We got a bunch of cargo ships unloading stuff at Cape Town. Got 500,000 supplies there. We do not need more supplies at Cape Town. Our carriers are still undergoing their refits, but they're getting close to being done, I think. 10 more days? Darn, still 10 more days on Lexington and Saratoga. So they're doing their thing there. We don't have any other carriers here, do we? No. We are also in the process of transiting our carriers back to the Pacific, and so we do have 2 carriers at Pearl. We've got the they're not repairing. Idaho, New Mexico. Okay, so they're doing some refit work. California made it back. But we've got the Wasp and the Hornet here, both in port. We're almost ready to start the refit on the Hornet here in just a few days. Probably do that because I can't imagine sending her anywhere immediately. And then we also do have another carrier heading toward Pearl. So the Enterprise is on her way to Pearl. She's due for a refit too. Is she not heading there? Where is she going? Why do I not see an actual route? Well, it is heading toward Pearl. It says destination Pearl. I'm not sure why it doesn't show me a route. But yeah, so Enterprise has arrived as well. So that'll be a 3rd carrier at Pearl. We've got some logistical stuff heading toward Australia. And then we've got the Indomitable is going to Cape Town. I forget why. She's got a withdrawal date coming up in 21 days. That's why. So we're gonna lose a British carrier who's gonna go back to the homeland, if you will, unfortunately. And that's pretty much everybody. I don't know that there's anything else worth calling out. We've got these British carriers here, the Illustrious and the Formidable. They're still going to be around for a little while. I don't think there's any shipping I need to withdraw yet. If we go to the ship withdrawal section, I think Indomitable is probably the closest, and she's moving to a port where she can withdraw from. We will also lose the troop transport Tasker Bliss in 50 days, the Formidable in 66 days. Some corvettes and submarines. The Cuttlefish we lose in 93 days. The Newcastle in 103 days. The Enterprise Cruiser in 124 days. And then the Illustrious in 6 months. So, sad day when we lose the Warspite. But that's almost a year away. Or 2/3 of a year anyway. Let's see. Where are other carriers? Because we only showed a few of them. Got the Hornet at Pearl, the Wasp at Pearl, Enterprise on the way. Where's Yorktown? Oh, Yorktown's on the way to the Panama Canal. Okay, so Enterprise will be at Pearl soon-ish. Hornet will arrive, Yorktown will arrive at the Panama Canal in 4 days, and then transit to Pearl after that. So within, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, we will have 4 carriers at Pearl. And then we will have 2 more on the way, because in 10 days we will get the Lexington class out of South Africa and have them headed that way too. And while the Hornet and Enterprise and Yorktown perhaps are refitting at Pearl, the Lexingtons will spend that time on the way to Pearl, fully refit and ready for bear. So we will have 6 carriers by the end of July, upgraded and ready at Pearl for operations, which is still a ways away in real life time, probably, but that's sort of where we fit. Meanwhile, we've got the Canadian Rocky Mountain Battalion has been sort of solidifying their position on Funafuti. We've got the Australians at Vadavupu. We've got a little bit of supply still unloading here, but we've pushed into the Ellis Island group. We've taken the Ellice Islands back from the Japanese. Baker is ours, and so Canton is isolated. I would like to take Canton as well to clear up our strategic line of communications. And then we are in the process of making a plan to go after New Caledonia. I have no idea where the Japanese carriers are. The last we saw, I think the Hiryu got torpedoed like 2 months ago. She took a couple of torpedoes. Maybe it was 3 months ago now. I don't know how long she'll be out of action. She may already be repaired, but she took a big torpedo from a Dutch sub and a small torpedo from a Dutch sub. We pretty confident she didn't sink, but that's about all we know. We do have the 6th Australian Division preparing to land at Comac on the northern tip. She's 100% ready, so fully prepared for a landing at Comac in New Caledonia. which I'm assuming is unoccupied or very lightly occupied. I assume the bulk of the enemy forces at Nomaya, but that may be a dangerous assumption. But the 6th Australian Division, which is made up of mostly crack troops, 70 experience, one of the best units we have in the entire map, preparing for landing at Comac. The 8th Marines, we are trying to move the entire 2nd Marine Division to Melbourne as well. The 8th Marines are preparing to land at Comac as well. The 6th, where are the other units here? So we've got most of these guys at Melbourne. We've got a couple on troop transports on the way to Melbourne. So we'll have a Marine Division and the 6th Australian prepared to land at Nomaya. And we have the Americal Division preparing to land at Nomaya on the southern tip. So the Marines and the Australians to land at Comac. The Americal, which got its nickname from being deployed to New Caledonia, so that is ironic because they never did go to New Caledonia in this game. The Americal and the 32nd Infantry Division preparing for operations against Nomaya. The Americal's almost to 100, so they're almost ready as well. 32nd's a little ways away, but I won't have all the shipping and everything in place, I don't think, until August for an actual operation against New Caledonia. So we are going to make a major play to take that back. It is a huge victory point objective, 30 for the Japanese, 300 for the Allies at Nomaya, and then Comac's not very valuable, but Nomaya certainly is. And then if I'm able to take New Caledonia from the Japanese, then I can use it as a nice little land base to base heavier bombers and crush them out of Tania, Efate, and Espiritu Santos. I had originally planned to go for Tana and Efate and use air bases here to shut down Espiritus and New Caledonia, but I decided let's do a big operations against New Caledonia. I don't have a lot of experience in major amphibious operations in War in the Pacific, so it felt like we should get some experience at a place I'm assuming he is not heavily dug in. Like, he landed a couple of brigades, but I doubt he... XCRG, I think it was, or maybe it was Lieutenant Rainbow Slash, landed a few divisions at New Caledonia to take it from me. Not divisions, brigades or regiments. We didn't have much of a force there defending. I am assuming that he is not heavily reinforced there at the end of such a long supply line. So I'm hoping this is a relatively easy operation where I can train on how best to launch amphibious operations. We will go in loaded for bear, preparing for the fact that it may not go as well. If I have the shipping to do it, I wouldn't mind landing some troops at either Anatum, where we can build an airbase, or Tana, where we have it can be a level 5 airfield. Maybe a Fate already has a level 4, so I think he's probably got something there building it. But it would be fun to, have a few support operations. We also do have some troops in New Zealand preparing for it as well. So we've got the 33rd Medium Artillery Regiment. If we actually take a look at what their operations are, we've got an artillery regiment, a combat engineer regiment, and a tank battalion all preparing to land at Nomaya as well. So the main plan will be 2 divisions of troops and some support artillery at Comac, 2 divisions of troops and some combat engineers and tanks at Nomaya. So 4 divisions all told, assuming we can get the transports to land. That's a huge operation. That's in terms of soldiers, that's like a 1945 operation. 4 divisions. I don't even think... Did they land 4 at Okinawa? I'm not sure. But in any event, that is the plan. In the meantime, I'm also planning to land a regiment at Canton ahead of time to take Canton back from him to clear that up. And if Comac goes well, then maybe... What? I think that's a misreport. I don't think there's a battleship at Tarawa. But in any event, I don't know if we have any other SIGINT here. 32nd Division is planning for an attack on Quilin. Is that the division we saw south of Quilin? It'd be interesting if it's not. I have to go back and check. If it is the troops south of Quilin, I don't think that means anything. But it could, if it's a new unit, could indicate a plan for an attack in China. Okay. So not a ton of new intel But yeah, that's where we find ourselves at, though. Okinawa had 7 divisions involved? Really? I didn't realize it was that large. Okay. So yeah, maybe we'll launch an attack south of Quilan next turn. See if we can crush that Japanese division there. I'm just waiting to see where he goes. Like, it feels like it shouldn't be yet Japan's time to turn over to be on the defensive. But what do I know, you know? I would expect him at least to plan off to retake Tavoy from us. We sent a brigade down there and took that. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to do... Actually, let's double check. How's Prince of Wales doing? She's out in England. Good old Prince of Wales. Only 210 more days, 11 more days on her repair journey. She'll sit out most of the war, but at least she's not a reef in the off the coast of Singapore. No radioactive free steel for you. Anyway, that's going to do it, I think, for today's episode of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, and I think that'll do it for the stream. A little bit of a shorter stream, I know, but that's all I got for you guys today. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks for coming out, and we'll try and make it not be 3 weeks between streams next time. Until next time, though. Also, maybe, I think, and I didn't realize this, but I think I'm allowed to restream now to YouTube as well. So I might start streaming simultaneously on YouTube and Twitch. Just because I know I used to have pretty good turnouts when I streamed on YouTube more regularly years ago. I moved over to Twitch to try and diversify so that everything wasn't just through YouTube. But I'm thinking it might make sense to stream on both platforms if I can. But I'll have to look into that a bit more. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for coming out. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm out. Bye-bye.